Wait, you have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hello everybody and welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, your TV Guidance Counselor. I am the on hiatus through no fault of my own Boston stand-up comedian. I've been doing this particular show since February 14th, 2014, not continuously. It's not like one of those charity things. But we're almost at episode 500. This is the show where each and every week an exciting guest picks a classic issue of TV Guide magazine from my personal collection. They pick what they would have watched that week, and then we discuss their choices on the show. This week, my guest is the incredible Pete Holmes, who you no doubt know from his stand-up, from Crashing, the show. I don't think he's ever had an actual crash. From You Made It Weird. He's just a great dude, and from here in Boston, and I know him from stand-up. And I'm going to tell you right now, we barely get to the TV Guide, but if you're a fan of Pete, you're probably not surprised by that. But I had a great time talking to him, and I want to have him on the show for a long time. So I'm glad that he found some time to be able to do it. He's a very busy guy, and I cannot thank him enough. If you have guests you'd like to see on the show, you can email me at ken@icanread.com or at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com, or I'm on social media at Kenneth W. Reed, R-E-I-D, or at TV Guidance. You can hit me up at all those places. Also, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TV Guidance Counselor. If you have even $1 a month, it really, really helps me do this show and not lose money doing it, although I don't mind. And I cannot thank the people who are patrons enough. Just let me know if there's anything that would entice you to become a patron, or just you want to shoot me a message, let me know how you're doing in these troubling times. I love hearing from you guys, and I relish receiving any sort of correspondence from you. Speaking of relish, here's this week's episode. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Pete Holmes.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Dad, I ended up selling one of the TVs that I bought off the Want Ad. I sold it back to the Want Ad, back into the Want Adiverse. But that was, I know we sound old right now, but that was like our first little taste of the internet.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a little community. Believe it or not, like being interested in tech was actually kind of a fringe activity back then.
Oh, totally.
So if you like had a camcorder and wanted to know how to edit and cared about like sound or like like now I feel like any 12-year-old knows about like what a boom mic is or a lavalier mic is. And back then it was me and a bunch of kids like me and you know, some fair people. But then like I feel like 90% of it was khaki vest, mustachioed weirdos that were only in it for like sketchy porn.
Of course, yeah.
Like they were like, it was the crossover of like hardcore, you know, bead, not Blockbuster because they didn't have porn, but the beaded section of the VHS store.
West Coast Video.
Those were the people, West Coast Video. Those were the people that had those monitors, and it's because they were watching something they didn't want you to see. Oh, yeah. And then there was me making parody videos with my friends. And that was like a nerd activity. Like now, totally. I'm grateful for like Bo Burnham and all the people that made it cool. But like when we were kids, if you were getting together and filming sketches for America's Funniest Home Videos or whatever, it was pretty hardcore dorky.
Oh, it's super dorky. Yeah, I had to go join our cable access station in order to learn how to use things, and it was a bunch of freaks. It was like old men who had a vendetta against someone that they wanted to get on TV.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe it. I was into music production, and without putting this guy down, somebody at my church was like, "Oh, you want to be a music producer?" Because I just liked. Oh, I was too shy to say, believe it or not, that I wanted to be in the limelight. Right. I did. But like, it takes a certain amount of courage to admit that to other people. So I was very interested in like, I'll direct the videos that I shoot with my friends. I'll have a cameo like Alfred Hitchcock. And then like I was in a band, but I couldn't yet see myself as being like the front man of a band. So I would be like, I'd learn how to use a 4-track and stuff. And then when I got an internship, which really just meant there was a guy in South Boston that wouldn't mind if there was a teenager just kind of around.
That's a loaded statement.
I know, it seems weird. It seems weird. But he was really nice. But like, I got there, when I was picturing it in my mind, I thought it would be like Wayne's World. Remember the Christopher Walken is the music producer in Wayne's World. So I'm like, I'm sure it'll be like sleek hallways and like water cascading behind the logo and all this stuff. And I get there, it's just an apartment basically that somebody turned into a studio. And that wasn't the biggest surprise because people that were into this sort of stuff, and I say this as one of them, so it's not a judgment. It's like, it was the weirdos. It was like, they all had like those yellow tinted glasses, maybe longer fingernails, like before it was cool wearing like, what was it called? The thrift store in Cambridge.
Not Una's or Garment District.
Not Una's. It was like the Garment District.
Yeah, Garment District, yeah.
Garment District T-shirts.
Closed by the pound.
Like, exactly. Before it was cool. I know that's like kind of cool now, but like, how old are you?
41.
So we're the same age. So like that was, I'm 42, but I'm just saying we're close.
Yeah.
Like we were there as it was shifting in from, and comedy is the same way. Comedy is like, was a whoopee cushion rubber chicken people. And we are exactly in that demographic that slowly watched it shift, probably while we were doing it.
Yeah.
But when we were in junior high, Weird Al was not the like fun sold out arenas. Like, I mean, I bet he sold out arenas, but that arena would have looked like the line for some weird thing.
And it would have smelled like Italian subs and looked like the line.
Yes, it would have smelled like Italian subs. Yes,
it was like exactly. The AV. I normally do an intro, but we're just going. We're just going. Pete Holmes, everybody. If you didn't know,
you don't need an intro.
You don't need no intro. But yeah,
you don't have time.
It was the kid who was an AV club guy. Like in school,
that's it.
We like aspired to be the one who was like, can you leave class and go to this classroom and help them with the projector? And be like, yes,
that's
I
right.
can.
Yes, I can. And you know, I'm actually, this is perhaps off topic and I want to let you host your show.
No,
but like, fine. First of all, I loved any activity that gave me time away from my family. And that's not because my family was a nightmare. I mean, they were in their own way, but not in the way that families can be nightmares. They were just sort of, you know,
you're a teenager.
Two weirdos.
Yeah, you don't want to be around them.
From Boston. Yeah, they were like aggressively 80s Bostonian weirdos. And I love them. And swimming. God, I love swimming. It was like a thing you could go, and it was quiet. You'd go underwater and you can't hear anything. And tinkering with like electronics was like a way to like get in a flow state. That's what we would say now. But I loved like trying to figure out like the logic of a VCR or the logic of a 4-track recorder or something like that. And it's still, you know, technology has definitely lapped both of us, but like I still have more than most. And I could have been the kid that helped with the projector. And that would have been at church or maybe in math class.
Well, I think you and I also grew up in the era of movies like War Games, or like we tried to aspire to be the friend they went to when they needed help. We'll be like, all right, see what you got here.
That's
like,
right.
We would be like the kid in the vampire movie who's like, I got a book about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's the guy you want to be.
Yeah.
He's at his house. He's been waiting for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not really in danger. He's involved, but he's not really involved. I still want to be that guy. We're just indoor kids.
Yeah. Human Google. Like I used to do
Human Google.
I used to do this on stage before in teen when I was allowed to be on stage. But I would say
Did you say before in teen?
Yeah. My two favorite inventions.
Real jealousy that I
you,
didn't think of before in teen.
I would say my two favorite inventions of the 21st century are Google and Uber, and I haven't used either, but they mean I get a lot fewer phone calls. So I don't get,
That's
Ken,
funny.
it's someone you haven't talked to in 10 years. who was the third bailiff in Night Court? I was
Yes.
Marshall Warfield. Thanks, bye. Or like, hey, can you
Yes.
come give me a ride? Oh my God. So it was like perfect.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's really, really funny. There was an app, it was called Cha-Cha, and it was before search engines were so easily used on our phones, and you would text them questions. It's actually pretty fun because it had a comedy element. The number, I think, was CHA. It was like a 6-digit number.
Yeah, it was like a
and you
real
text
person. They'd get back to
It
you.
was real people, yeah. And they would Google it for you, but you could also text them, like, what happens when you die, and you'd get, like, different responses, like, there's this theory and this theory. Or you could say, like, what are you most afraid of? They'd reply. Like, they knew people would be doing it in funny ways, and the good people at Cha-Cha were ready. But now, that's the bit that I wrote that sort of, I don't want to say it like catapulted my career, but I wrote a joke about how Google was ruining our lives. And that was the joke that got me on Conan. And I'm really proud of it. Actually, that's not true. That sounds like I sit around glowing about it. That's not true.
I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you can't see him, but he is wearing a shirt with the text of that joke on it. And he's got the cue cards from Conan behind his head right now.
I mean, now that I have a daughter and I know what real pride is, I don't want to say that like I'm super proud of that. I'm glad it happened, but
Let's be honest, though, your daughter's full name is that joke.
It's my It takes 3.5 minutes to say, but it'll get you by the end. Yep. It'll get you laughing by the end. I forget what I was going to say.
Or you're saying now that you have a daughter, it's not the most proud. But
I mean, how sad? Like sometimes I say on stage, like how great it would be to win a Golden Globe, and I laugh. But I live in LA, and nobody thinks that's funny because they're like, it would be great to win a Golden Globe, and as I act on things, yes. Did you know you get a bonus if you win a Golden Globe? Like you get it's
like
in
a bump
your
up in pay.
You get a little bump in pay. I've heard, like if you're in a movie or something and you win an Oscar, you win money from the studio or something. There's incentives.
Makes sense. It's like having a doctor specialty or something. Like you're like, well, I'm a general practitioner, but I also dabble in cardiology.
It's like I'm not trying to. Obviously, this isn't that profound, but like it is similar to sex work. Like show business, there are parallels, meaning. You have to quantify and monetize things that are normally not discussed, like being incredibly emotionally moving. Like, oh my God, Al Pacino, you made us all think you would take a flamethrower to that school. Here's an award, and here's maybe $150,000. Because you really made us come so hard.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, I think it's like
we heart came so hard.
It's like some Goomba slipping $100 in his pocket for like, hey, you know what? Good job, kid. Here's a golden.
Yeah, it's greasing a maitre d'.
Exactly, but in award form.
That's what show business is. It's taking a moment like greasing a maitre d' and going like, what if there was a whole town?
We can do this professionally.
Yeah. No, there's something. You know what's the weirdest thing? Again, I'm sorry. We'll get to the TV guides.
All right. I'm all about tangents.
But there is something like that is when you turn comedy into your job, and I see a lot of people doing this that don't, and it's a threat to my own life. It's like being silly or being funny for free is like less fun. And you're like, well, that's what those stories mean. The devil, I don't believe in a literal devil. I believe in an idea like a happenstance that if you want to be Jimi Hendrix and play the guitar better than anybody, there's like a price to pay. That's what those stories mean, is there's a price to pay. And that's why I love, talking even with you right now and just being silly just for its own sake. It's really important to, I don't know why I'm
it's because
giving a lesson here.
when you monetize a thing that's of sort of human value,
that's it,
or like your day-to-day value, it can make your sort of private or like the you enjoyment of that less of a priority because you're you have to compartmentalize things. And it is true with the price you pay. I remember I read a great piece about Prince when he died, and they were like, he was a nerd. Like, he literally had to sit in his basement all day and practice so he was the greatest person ever. So he didn't get to go out and fuck a bunch of girls, but he wrote a lot of songs about it. You know, it was like, because it was like, he'll tell you exactly what he would have done. And
That's
was like
so funny.
This weird trade-off. And it's
that is one of the funniest things in the world that no one will ever find funny, is what you just said. Not that it's not funny, but like when I see a quarterback or Michael Jordan or somebody who's incredible at guitar, because we've, you know, in comedy, we've put in so much time trying to master whatever it is, spontaneous creativity or charisma or novelty or whatever it might be, all the different ingredients of comedy. We know how dorkish and stupid and obsessive and compulsive it can be. And I think it's so funny that some of the least obsessive or compulsive or heady, nerdy people hoist up and admire people that if you really knew, like, I've never done this as a bit, but like when you watch biopics, I think it's biopics, about like Elton John, and it's so stupid. And he's like at the piano and he's like, hold me close, hold me closer, tiny lover. No. Dance. And then he looks and he sees like a spinning ballerina and he goes, dancer. Like, the reason that's stupid isn't because that's not how it happened. It's stupid because that is how it happened.
Yeah.
And you don't want to know that's how it happened. You don't want to know that Queen was just sitting around going,
that works.
Like that. There's something there. It's so fucking lame. David Bowie, Mick Jagger, these are lame, and I say this as one of them, desperate people. Like Mick Jagger doing his little rooster dance. He's just going like, do you think I'm cool?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think I'm cool? And like, what's fucked up is you go, yeah, we do think you're cool. And it was designed. Yeah. And you and I know that because crowds will think we're funny. And it's like, well, we've just tricked you into a different trap. And they're all pleasant traps, but they wanted to look sexy and cool, and we just wanted to look funny. But we both know everybody's everything. Everybody's cool sometimes, everybody's sexy sometimes, everybody's funny sometimes. But I'm not surprised at all that Prince was a dork.
Yeah, it's like a willing ignorance that people have about the reality of things. So, like, people know reality shows are scripted. They have to know in their heart of hearts, but they pretend like they're not. They know that when we go on stage, we're not making everything up as we go along, but they want to feel like we are, and so they kind of believe that. You know, and that sort of the best moments are spontaneous things that didn't have a lot of intention behind them. I talked to Jimmy Jam, of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and my favorite thing is, do you know where him, Prince, Terry Lewis, Morris Day, do you know where they all met?
IHOP?
Math club. They were all after-school math club kids, and they met in an after-school math program. The time Prince did the math club. And
well, sorry.
Oh, no. And I was going to also say that, like, one of my favorite things is, you know, John Carpenter's The Thing? See that film?
Yeah.
This could be a Who's on First bit for like 20 minutes. Oh, the thing. Yeah, I've seen The Thing.
Yeah, I know The Thing.
But there's a scene where Wilford Brimley is The Thing, and he's ripping off a guy's face, and he's got this like really intense look on his face, and it's like a really great bit of acting. And I remember someone asked him, they're like, you know, that's just that scene has stuck with me. Like, what was your motivation? What were you thinking about when you did that scene? And Wilford Brimley goes, I was thinking about picking up my laundry. The person is so defeated. I was like, you didn't want to know that. That's exactly what he's thinking about. Also, now whenever I see that movie in that scene, I'm like, picking up his laundry. So
that's right.
You don't want to know.
You don't really want to know. It's a little. It's like magic. It's like everything under enough scrutiny is sort of disappointing, or, you know, that's sort of a defeatist or a negative way of putting it. I just mean like. I was cut out of the movie, but Joaquin Phoenix was in the movie. And I remember just watching a guy. I'm not saying he's not a genius. I'm just saying, like, a genius is also just a guy kind of walking around smoking cigarettes. He didn't, like, it's the same with watching a comedian about to go on stage. They're not backstage. Robin Williams wasn't backstage going, yes, or like zoning up, or
Yeah.
he's just a regular fucking guy smoking cigarettes, talking to other actors, looking kind of, and I say this with love because I recognize myself in it, looking sort of awkward, uncomfortable. It's not like he wanted to get out of there, but he also wasn't like, yes, my people.
Right.
Just kind of like a weird, hunched over guy. All I remember is he'd put out the cigarette when they said action, and the second they said cut, he'd relight the same cigarette and keep smoking it. And I was like, this is that's my point, though. That actually takes me back to what I was going to say. So all those people meeting in math class, talent is it's what like our dads, like the concept of our dads, they all love talent and they all love winning. I'm just generalizing here.
It's true.
So they see Brett Favre or Tom Brady and they're just like, yeah, that's the way you do it. Stay on top, baby. And what you and I know just from being in the arts, and what a lot of people know, I'm not saying only comedians know that, a lot of people listening know this because they're just attentive people. So I'm not trying to draw a line and say, we're over here. A lot of people figure this out, that like talent is really the after effect often of compulsion. Mm-hmm. And compulsion isn't a bad thing. I thank my lucky stars for compulsion, because the difference between me, the success that I've had in show business, and someone else who might be funnier and might be more naturally whatever, this or this, is that literally my obsession with certain things, not all the time, will get me out of bed. Like I've had to pull over a car to write down a joke. I don't ruin meals, but like Val knows the deal. If I say, can you text that to me? She texts it to me. What is that? Like, we're doing okay. Our needs are met. Why do you still want me to write down? The line I had to write down this morning because I didn't have my phone was, you know how I know I'm 40? Is I was recently at a party and I said, and this is true, I said, don't get me started on gut health. Who have I... And that's just true. And when you get a little small plate, you know, there's like a little free appetizer that the chef sent out, meaning it's small, but it has a lot of flavor, and you recognize yourself in it, and you're like, that's just too good. You got to write that down. And Val knows the deal.
It's an obsession, and this actually does point back to the TV Guide in that it's I think it's a consistency. Like I think the sort of one of the common denominators I see with a lot of people, I think a lot of times we're looking for consistency. So like obsession or ritual tends to be a way to sort of force that into our lives if we're used to like chaos, and to the point where there is some suffering involved in sort of talent or success. It's like I say this all the time, that like you have to go through the pain of being bitten by the radioactive spider in order to have the powers.
This is what I say.
Do you say
you
that?
Didn't hear me say that?
No, I've never heard you say that.
I'm not surprised, because that is why all of those origin stories of superheroes are like, your parents are dead.
Yeah.
And then you're bit by a spider. Or, in Batman Begins, they certainly turn the volume up on him being traumatized by bats. But like, this is not just for comedians. It's the point of life, is to somehow alchemize and redeem the thing that hurt you, because we were all hurt or disappointed or out of control or afraid in some way. And if you can turn that, and I bet you can, anybody listening, I bet you can, if you can turn that into some way of being of service to a community of humans, that's what superheroes are doing.
Exactly.
And I say that all the time. If you want to climb on walls, you have to get bit by a spider. And by the way, that doesn't mean you need to be like... You don't have to suffer.
You don't have to put yourself through suffering in order. It's not like a penance.
You don't have to seek it out.
Yeah.
I guarantee you suffered more. In fact, not to shit on Boston, but a lot of my friends sometimes when I talk about my trauma, because I'm all West Coast, and I'll talk about something that was difficult in my childhood, and I have no problem talking about it as trauma and something that was fucked up. Yes, I own it. I claim it. I go, that was fucked up for me. And sometimes I'll talk to somebody that I went to high school with, and I'll be like, well, you remember. And they'll be like, I don't think it was that bad. And I'm like, fuck.
That's a here thing. I'm
not saying it's just Boston, but that is such a Boston thing.
It is.
And you'll laugh, Ken. The guy that said that to me is a therapist now.
Yeah.
Even a Boston therapist is less open than a West Coast comedian.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing this on stage for a while, but I was like, there were things I didn't realize weren't normal till I started leaving Boston. One of them was, one of the jokes I made is like, one of them I realized that people outside of Boston don't use scratch tickets as health insurance. But I was also
Hilarious.
like, most people's go-to gambit in a disagreement isn't immediately to punch someone and then figure it out later. Like
That's really funny.
That's the things we have here where it just seems normal at the time. And I've had times where I've been telling people a story I thought was funny about growing up, and when I'm done,
And they're
horrified. And I'm like, oh, was that not good?
Yeah. There's something really... I'll say something good about Boston because it is fun to shit on it, and I don't feel like you're shitting on it. I'm just saying we're being honest about it. Yeah, I love shitting on it. People ask me if I miss it, and I'm like, what? That's not entirely fair. There's things about it I miss, but like, I don't understand anyone missing where they're from, if they're a comedian especially. Like, I'm just like, why? I understand it's the beautiful factory that made you. And I understand that there's certain parts of Boston that I love to visit and it's fun. But I have a lot of friends from high school that are like moving back to Boston. And I'm like, Christian Finnegan has a great joke where he's like, I don't like Red Sox hats because it's not other sports hats because nobody in a Cubs hat ever called me, and he says the hard F word. And I'm the same way. If I see a Red Sox hat, it has nothing to do with the Red Sox. I go, are you not safe? Are you going to like bend my hand towards...
What are you looking at? What are you looking at?
Are you going to like crab claw me in some way? I also, this is a funny Boston one. After I had some success, I went back to Boston for a funeral, and somebody there said to me, they were like, look at you out in Los Angeles making all your dreams come true. And I was like, if the subtitles were on, and we all knew, I heard her as if this is what she said, you think you're better than me? Go fuck yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And it was at a funeral for my family member.
The best place
so
to
nobody
do it.
was like, let's give him a break. They were like, I'm going to go tell him that I don't think he's that special or whatever.
It's the most fueled by spite city on earth.
It's a spite town.
And it was funny when you were saying the thing about the nerds sort of doing comedy. I almost interrupted you and said, except here. Because in the 80s, it was assholes. And the people who've endured outside of Boston, like Bobcat or Stephen Wright or Dana or those kind of people, are the nerds. But the people who are here still doing it, going on stage and talking about towel heads, they're guys in the 80s who would have had that hat on, and they were just funnier at it,
It's another Christian Finnegan thing that he said to me once that I'll never forget. He said there are two kinds of comedians: those that called people the fag. Forgive me.
Yep.
I don't like that word, but I'm trying to make a point.
It's true. Yeah.
Not spread hate. There were people that called people that word, and there were people that got called that word. And I really think that when I heard that, I was like, that just filled a blank in my understanding of comedy. And Boston is also Stephen Wright and all these like incredibly sensitive people. And that brings me back to the nice thing I was going to say about Boston is when I do the Paradise or something, which I was before I got busy doing TV things, I really love doing the Paradise every year for Thanksgiving. And those crowds were the antidote to everything you and I are lamenting because, Ken, we're what we like about Boston, and we are the only other people that are like us are the people that suffered or endured, you could say, the same kind of pressure.
Yeah.
So I grew up thinking Boston didn't want me because I don't know what a carburetor is, and I don't know where the fan belt is, and I don't know how to get on Route 1 and go up to Everett. I don't know.
Who's your favorite player?
I don't know my way.
Who's your player? Who's your favorite player?
I don't know the Red Sox. I don't know the Bruins. I don't know where. I didn't know the Patriots didn't play in Boston. Like, I don't know. And that's because that was what my dad went to for love and understanding, was those types of things. And then that didn't work for us. So we went other places. So I know Weird Al, and I know The Simpsons, and I know like later Seinfeld and stuff, and I know comic books, and that sort of stuff. Just is. It's not better or worse. My dad's comic books was the Red Sox because that protected him.
Yeah.
And that made him feel safe and loved. And me buying X-Force made me feel safe and loved. So it's the same thing is happening. But now when I go and perform in Boston and you make fun of how you never really felt seen by your own city, there's, I'd say, hundreds of thousands of people, or there's thousands of people in Boston that feel exactly the same way. And most of them live in Cambridge.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, yeah.
so you can find them.
Yeah, totally. It's like that was one of the things that watching television for me was we got to experience all this stuff outside of Boston that wasn't necessarily showcased here. Like I'd see punk rock bands or,
Well, that too. Yeah.
You know,
the Middle East.
Yeah.
I didn't know you go. I went to punk shows every weekend.
Oh yeah. Well, I was in my punk rock band that played at the Rat all the time.
You did?
Yeah, we started with Dropkick Murphys and all those bands.
You did?
We did.
Whoa.
We were called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo.
No way.
Oh yeah, which was super weird. I remember it was like I was 12, 13 years old and I had a growth spurt that summer. So I basically was like the height I am now and had sideburns. And so I'd go to the Rat, go to the Middle East, and I never drank and still haven't. So they just let me in because I wasn't causing a problem. But,
Yeah.
it was a weird place to be because I never really felt like I fit in there either because those scenes were also very like aggressive and like kids kind of
it was
drinking and I was just, but I was still there.
It was fighting aggression with aggression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that goes back to like climbing on walls or being Batman. I know they punch people, but like the headline isn't really the punching. It's the conversion of a negative experience into helping. And that when I found comedy, I had the same feeling I think you probably had, which was I was in the hardcore, believe it or not, I would go to hardcore punk shows. And for some reason I was like, I like this, but it's not entirely correct.
Yeah.
And it was probably getting like flip kicked by skinheads.
Yep.
And like just pushed, like you were a tall guy too. I'm 6'6", I was 6'5.5", but like I was that height in high school. And everybody knew, I just feel like looking back, they could probably tell I was from Lexington.
Oh, I'm sure.
And like just soft and
Look at this
scared.
fucking kid.
And then you become a little bit of a target and you're like, but the funny thing is, dude, when my parents visit and they'll come out and see me here, when they leave, the only thing I want to listen to is hardcore punk music.
Who are your
Not
bands?
pop punk. I need it like a antidote.
Oh yeah.
Because, and again, it's not. It sounds like I'm shitting on my parents. There's just like a.
There's an equilibrium that needs to be achieved after that. Like you have to reset.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like kind of like smiling and kind of go. And you did that. That's why you do it for like 18, 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's what Saturday at the Middle East was like, let's push each other and let's scream and let's yell. And dude, how heartbreaking is this? Why no one even really tried to understand, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Not like, what's wrong with you, but like, what's going on? Like,
What are
I'd
you
like to
getting out of
know
this?
you.
Yeah.
Why do you like it? Can I listen to someone? Like, I was in a punk band, like breaking bass strings. It was so aggressive. I regularly broke and had to go to Daddy's Junkie Music and fucking Mass Ave. And they were like, what are you doing that you're breaking bass strings? I was like, working out frustration.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we were doing. And now I feel like 2021, at least more so, if my daughter was ever shredding so hard, I'd like to think, and you know what? Because of the education my parents gave me and the love and support they gave me, now I can move the ball further downfield than they did, which is the point of life.
Right.
I can be a little bit more available and be like, what are you frustrated about? Like, why do you want to write the song? Scream.
Who were your bands? Who would you go see? Like, who were your?
I mean, I feel like if there's any chance that someone listening if there's any podcast I could say the bands that I liked, it might be this one. I really liked The Unseen.
Oh yeah, we play with The Unseen all the time.
You did.
Yeah, we did. Trip is still a good friend of mine, John.
Trip, their lead singer?
Who played the bass, yeah.
Yeah, I was a bass lead singer too, so that was a big deal for me. And Mark, their drummer.
Mark Civitaris, Mark Unseen.
Mark Civitaris,
Yep.
Mark Unseen. Well, Mark, I used to write letters. You could write to The Unseen, and there I was in my Victorian nice house in Lexington, writing on like an antique desk, but I'm writing on a flyer and I'm dotting my I's with X's to like look cool to some address in like
Hingham. He was in Hingham though.
Hingham. Yeah, I'm writing to Hingham. And he's writing me back. I mean, there it was, Bloomfield Street, Lexington, Mass. He's writing me back. So he knew where it was. But I wasn't too concerned with being a poser because I knew how I felt about punk rock.
Right. Yeah, no.
But I would ask him questions like, did you use a double bass on the intro to...
Too Young to Know?
Yeah. Well, that's the record.
Yeah.
Was there a song called Too Young to Know?
Yeah.
Because there was a song that opens with a bass, which is like...
Oh,
It's really fast like that. I was like, I knew he wasn't using a double bass. But I wanted to flatter him without flattering him, and I was like, and he did write back and, P.S. No, I do not use a double bass on alternative or whatever, and I'd be like, he's my friend.
Oh yeah, that's hilarious. Like those, literally, you probably can't see it, but I got a poster up. But when we played with Showcase Showdown and the toy dolls,
Well, Showcase Showdown, I didn't really like Showcase Showdown that
they
much.
were a little. They seemed older, and they were like a little more. They had a sense of humor, which seemed off-putting, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah. I wasn't in it for that. Although did you Doc Hopper?
Doc Hopper. Yeah, they were more like a power pop band too.
I liked them a lot. And I one time asked the lead singer, so I'm like 16, 17 years old at the Middle East or something. And I asked him, because they used to like jump around and they'd go nuts. And I'd say, how do you have so much energy? And as I was asking him that, I was like, in my mind, even though I was 16, I'm like, please don't say cocaine. Like, I know we're all like hardcore and stuff, but like, I'm a Christian guy. I'm a sweet guy. Like I was
not the answer I want.
But he didn't. He said a lot of coffee. And in that moment, there was this understanding and this respect that he knew I was a young kid. I don't think they were doing cocaine. You don't have to do cocaine.
Yeah.
The music itself is enough to adrenalize you to that point.
Especially in that scene, that wasn't super popular.
But that was the other thing that made me, because I was religious, I was straight edge. And then I was like, oh, I can be straight edge. And that's like cooler. It's like I'm choosing to do this. And Minor Threat, of course. I like Minor Threat. But Doc Hopper was funny in a way that I liked. Not to put down the Showcase Showdown, but I didn't like the guy's voice. He sounded like the guy from the B-52s.
Yeah.
There was almost like a crooning and like a nasal.
Yeah, it was annoying. Yeah,
that sounded annoying. It didn't sound as annoying live,
Right.
but if you got like a record and they're putting those vocals up front, I'm like, maybe just for me, literally, I can see how people would like it. But for my taste, when I was 17 years old, it wasn't for me. But I really like. And then I went and saw the Casualties, and I was like, I think this is a little too.
I was just telling my wife about them the other day because we toured with them. And
you did?
They were the worst. They were these Brooklyn just scumbags. And actually the singer got kicked out eventually because he was like a sex pest freak.
Really?
But they would be the guys, they'd show up with a van full of merch and no gear. And then he'd be like, hey, can we maybe allowed to like use your shit? And they'd break it and so I'd be like, no. Why don't you not take a box of t-shirts and bring your guitar? And people were like, and I'm like, they're freaking assholes. Like, screw these guys. And they're a terrible band. Like, they're god awful.
I just liked their hair, or I was drawn to, like, they had amazing hair. And I remember, dude, I was scared by Tim Armstrong giving the finger on the back of Let's Go. Like you forget the horror element of punk. And the Casualties were attractive to me, meaning I was attracted to them as a band because they were scary.
They're a freak show.
They were a freak show. And I remember on their 7-inch, it would say, lots of beers too, and it would list all the people they like.
Yeah.
And it would say lots of piss or lots of puke too, and it would list all the people they didn't like, and it would be like the Boston Police Department and all this stuff. And I was like, these guys, they don't give a fuck.
Oh,
but I never liked them. Doc Hopper covered the commercial for Juicy Fruit.
Yes.
And that's when I was like, I like these guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of humor I was into. And I thought they were really good. I remember every band I saw. I saw bands that there's no way you'd remember. I saw at the Avalon, they opened for Rancid, I think.
Deltonic?
They were called, what's that?
Waterdog? Deltonic?
Waterdog.
Yeah.
I thought it was Water Dogs.
No,
I thought it was
Waterdog.
plural.
Yeah, the Waterdog, yeah.
I can't believe you know Waterdog.
Of course, I was at that show.
You were at that show! I can't believe you were at that show!
It's not all those shows.
I can't believe it. I'm freaking out. This is the best podcast I've ever been on. You were at the Rancid show at the Avalon,
Yep.
where Waterdog opened.
Yep, and Scott Deltonic
And when
got
Water-
really mad.
And who did?
Scott from Deltonic got mad at the crowd because they were being dicks and he almost got into a fight.
Really? I don't remember that. What happened?
I forget exactly what happened, but they were like heckling them because Deltonic was a little bit more of like a hardcore type band and Waterdog was like a pop punk band.
I remember.
And they were, I think Waterdog was like a major label band too that then got dropped before they put out a record. They were like in that category of like Clover and some of those bands.
I googled Water Dogs, but like I couldn't find them.
Yeah.
Because, okay, I think it's telling that like we were going like again, sort of masters at building brick walls inside to not let things bother us. So there was a fight. And I don't even remember it.
Oh yeah,
like we were basically just playing the hand we were given. Like, what is our skill? Well, going to a high school where I'm scared a lot, sometimes fights and weird shit. And I was like, but I can kind of like freeze. I'm not a fight. I'm not a flight. But I can freeze pretty good. And then would literally in our free time go and freeze to watch fights with hardcore bands.
Oh yeah, I saw some of those brutal fights at those shows. I saw Bad Brains once, and HR. This was at Avalon. This band called Hagfish opened, who were like a pop punk band. Two bands opened: Hagfish and a band called Roguish Armament, which were like a all black dude rap, like a hardcore rap band. And then Bad Brains and HR, who now we know is a true, like he's mentally ill, like he has manic depression and bipolar disorder and all this stuff. So you never knew what you were going to get with him. But 2 or 3 minutes into the show, I'm standing up front. He decides that this girl spit on him, which she did not. And he takes
which,
the
by the way,
stand
oh no, I don't like this story.
right in her face and then just left. And the cops came and she was okay. Like it could have been a lot worse, but I was like, 15 and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's what happens.
I mean, again, not on one hand, I'm really glad that my parents let me go to their shows, and on the other hand, it's like, hey, shouldn't you have stopped me?
Yeah. Oh, I was 13 hanging out at the Rat, or we were 16. We'd drive to New York and do shows, or we're playing in Philly. Like we were in really rough parts of Philly. You know, we used to play this when we were 16 or 17, and you know, because I never got in trouble.
I'm still. Can I tell you one thought I had about water? Two things about that Waterdog show. Waterdog. One, I was probably 16 or so. Is that about right? Mm-hmm. Because we're about the same
95,
age.
yeah. So you would have been 16.
Yeah, 16. So I remember watching the Waterdog. I call them the Waterdog. And I was like, how are these guys not huge? And that is why I would Google them from time to time, going like, what the fuck happened to Waterdog? Because they were not that much older than us. They were probably in their 20s.
19, 20 probably, yeah. They were very Green Day-ish. They had
That's what I mean. So Green Day is about to, I believe Dookie comes out in about 95. 94.
Yeah.
So it had just come out. And it's like the biggest record of all time. And I'm sure you at the Riot at the Hat Show.
A friend of mine got trapped in a porta potty that was flipped over door side down during that.
And poo-poo got on him?
Oh, yes.
Oh, no. Oh no, no poo poo. I don't like that poo poo. I don't like that girl getting hit in the face, and I don't like that poo poo.
They weren't good things.
No, these are bad things. I remember being, I don't want to say smart enough. It's not like I was dumb, but I stayed on the perimeter.
No,
I was
same.
at the perimeter for everything I went to. I was at the perimeter.
You needed a quick exit if you had to.
I wanted a quick exit. Yeah. And there I was at Green Day and going like, this is why we stay on the perimeter. I was right by the river. Yeah. And I was like, this is great. I think at one point I was getting pushed closer to the river and then it was over and it was time to like run away. And we did. And that's when I started a band. I started a band because I watched Green Day start a riot in my city. And I was like, no joke, I'm not just trying to make this a cute anecdote. I was like, oh, that's the power of art. Like, you can make something as imposing and as scary as Boston. All of it will pay attention. You'll be in the Boston Globe the next day. And Billy Joe's quote was, the youth of Boston finally stood up in this town or something like that. And I was like, I'm sorry, is this a revolution?
Yeah.
Am I part of a revolution? Like, it felt important and real. And that's when I was like, we're starting a band. And I did start a band. But then I go and see Waterdog and I'm like, how are these kids not Green Day? Because I remember the lead singer. I didn't like that they had a singer. I was very DIY and I thought you should play an instrument. I was like, what the fuck is this guy? Right. You're telling me the guitarist and the bass player can't sing as well as this guy? Just felt a little U2, a little too precious. You know what I mean? I know you know what's that? This is
a front man we're dealing with.
I don't want
here.
a front man. Yeah, I don't want a Stone Temple Pilots. Right. I don't like. It feels like show business to me. Yeah. Actually, it feels like we're gonna get like a sort of like the best looking one, and he'll be the cool one. But his energy was incredible. But then the other thing I was going to tell you was I was leaning against the side, and I was with my bass teacher Jeff Cody, who is from Lynn, I think, and we're getting pushed against the side, and I remember someone did spit on Tim, and it was a dude. He was crowd surfing, and he turned his head and spat the most disgusting spit I've ever seen in his face, and it was dripping down his open. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to gross anybody out. I just mean like it was disgusting.
Yep.
And you probably saw this same spit, and Tim Armstrong did not react in the least.
Day at the office.
He didn't even stop the line he was singing. He finished the line. And then I remember after the show, if you remember this, I'm going to shit in my hat. After the show, they're leaving. And they're walking in that, like, where the bouncers would stand.
Yep.
But so they're exiting through the front, which is kind of weird. But I guess it's kind of punk rock. Like, I remember before that show, Lars was sitting in the house.
Oh,
like
yeah.
He was just
Lars
hanging
would hang
out.
around. Actually, this is Lars is on Instagram right now, and he sells stuff. Like I'll send you. He's got like a secret name, but he's like got this ridiculous record collection, and he'll like post stuff and be like, "Hey, I'm selling this best offer, whatever." But he's got some cool stuff.
Really?
I'll send it to you after. But yeah,
Please do.
I've had long talks about horror flicks with him.
No shit.
Huge horror nerd.
Well, I'll give you a fun one after this. Because I want to see if you remember this. Somebody in the crowd. So I'm just like waiting for Rancid to walk by. And by the way, I thought Matt was the coolest because I was a bass player. And at one point during the show, I gave him one of these kind of went. And he was just standing there. And he gave me a nod back. And I was like, dude, you're the coolest.
Solidarity. You and me.
It was.
Yeah.
That's right. And then some woman in the crowd took off a necklace, and it was an ankh. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
The Egyptian ankh. And they gave it to Tim, and he put it on, and he left with it. And I was like, that is so nice. Like, I know that's like a weird thing to be on the lookout for at a punk show, but that is what I was looking for. I was looking for some humanity, some kindness. And this super fan gave him the necklace, and he bowed his head, and she put it on him. I was like, that's what's right on about all of this, is he's exiting through the front. Then I went and saw Rancid again a couple years later.
At Avalon?
And it was all jocks.
Yeah.
It was completely ruined.
Yep.
I was at that show, and I don't remember where the next show was, You probably remember.
It was Providence. They did Lupo's in Providence the next day. That was with Rocket from the Crypt opening.
This isn't the same year. This is a couple years later. You really are hardcore, and I love that. This show at the Avalon, I was like, this is awesome, and it felt like all the kids from the Middle East shows. Then, like, now I'm in college. That's what it is. So it might have been at the Avalon again.
Yeah, it was Luna Chicks and Rocket from the Crypt. It was about 97. It was when And Out Come the Wolves came out.
That's right. That's right. And it was the worst show of all fucking time. And everywhere I looked, I went to Lexington High School, we called the jocks the white hats because they all wore white hats.
This white USC hat or whatever, yeah.
That's right. Or it said Cox or some fucking shit. I'm still mad at them. And I some of them were okay. I got to know some of them, and I was like, "Oh, you're not total pieces of shit."
Well, a lot of them run their dad's construction or landscaping business now.
That's right.
Like you're just like never left, married the girl they dated in high school. They're still assholes.
That's right. And they were when we talk about getting called the F word, it was them.
Yep.
And then they were at the show.
Yep.
And it was so aggressive. It was like Woodstock 99. It was that energy of like, oh, I can punch people here. It's okay to punch people. And like, I'm on the side. It's our strategy. And I'm a big guy. I'm uncomfortable. And I'm looking around at all the smaller people, men and women, but a lot of them were girls. And I was like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Ruby Soho's a good song, but it wasn't worth ruining the whole thing.
Yeah, you'll enjoy this. That show, that exact show, because I always felt obligated that I'd have to stand in front of like girls I didn't know so they didn't get punched or someone ran into them. We were kind of to be a little shield. And some dickhead frat dude, white hat kid was crowd surfing, which I always hated, and he was trying to kick everybody. So I stole his shoes. I threw them in a garbage bin, like in the Avalon. And at leaving the show, I saw this kid walking down Lansdowne Street with no shoes.
This is amazing.
Adidas or something. And I'm like, I'm sure he can afford new ones, but this asshole has to take the train home or whatever it is.
Yeah, no shoes.
No shoes on in February or whatever it was.
But that's what we needed was, I mean, again, there were moments, like you said in that earlier moment, where the hardcore scene would be nasty and bad. But for the most part, it looked like a lot of wounded people, not people looking to wound people necessarily. Every once in a while, you got the sense like, that dude's dangerous.
Oh, yeah, he's just a psycho and is looking for blood.
Yeah, there's just a psycho who just saw like, oh, I can hang out here and get fucked up and smoke, and the music matches my insides. But like there were a lot of, I feel like there were a lot, maybe not a lot, but there were enough of people like me and you, which means like secret sweeties that just have some aggression that they want to work out through music, that don't want any real trouble. They don't want to get arrested, and they don't want to hurt anybody, and they definitely don't want to get hurt. Right. And then that second Rancid show, everybody got hurt. Or it just like, I think I might have left. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I left at Bad Religion. Bad Religion that year was like that. Bad Religion played that same year at Avalon, and it was all dickheads, and I didn't even stay the whole show. I was like, this is not worth seeing.
Do you remember this part? I forget who opened that's the Bad Rancid show. Bad because of the crowd. But there was a moment where Tim, I feel like there was the stage and you could see the backstage. And Tim
there was a balcony that Tim and Lars were watching from at Avalon.
Oh, really? Because I remember they walked by and the crowd went nuts. It was like, this is such a dorky example, but when I saw Hamilton, the Clintons were there. And it was a similar like, there they are. And everybody was freaking out. And I was like, and that's when I started getting nervous. Yeah. Meaning, if they got that sort of response for walking by, what is this going to be like when they come out? So cut to, and I just feel like you would appreciate this. Years later, I'm in LA, and Tim Armstrong has a radio show out here. And I don't remember how it happened, but somehow I was pitched to him as a guest for something I was promoting, or maybe, I don't know. I wish I could remember, because somebody deserves the credit for this. Meaning they knew I was a Rancid fan, they knew I had a show, and they got me on it. And I did it. And first of all, I was freaking him out. Not in a bad way, I don't think. We stayed in touch. We were like friendly, so it wasn't a bad freak out. But like my Rancid knowledge is pretty good. And I was asking about all these weird things, like why do so many Rancid records start with someone other than him singing? Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, Matt would sing. Matt sang on almost every song of the first record. Like he was the front man on the first record.
He is. Well, that's debatable. They're sharing it a lot.
Yeah,
I don't know why I said that's
more
debatable.
than he did on anything else.
He's definitely. It's almost like Taking Back Sunday or something. There's two front people. So I'm totally with you there, and you're absolutely right. Boy, I could dork out about this forever. But if you listen, even in Out Come the Wolves is Maxwell Murder, and that's Lars opens that. And this will bother both of us. Tim said to me, he was like, he seemed impressed that I noticed that. And then he was like, there's a reason for that. And I still don't know what it is. But there is a design to it.
To be fair, he's hard to understand sometimes. He's probably like, disobedient.
That's really funny.
And then you're like, I'm okay.
Which is funny because, of course, he's not. You know what I mean? And that's not like a secret. You can listen to him in interviews, and he doesn't have that marble mouth thing, which, again, is show business. We're back to like how comedians aren't really in good moods all the time, or they're not feeling funny all the time. And Tim is sober, and he's still singing like he's in withdrawal from heroin.
Yep.
And that's because that's what we want. We want him to sound like that. Because you know what, Ken? That's what it sounds like in here sometimes.
Yes.
Like it's what we would call a metaphor. It's not literally true. It just feels better when he sings, and it feels better
character.
when in a character. And the guitars could be in tune. They have the technology. The guitars could be in tune, but they don't. They detune them, so it sounds a little bit.
It's not what you want.
It's not what you want. They're giving us what we need, I would even say. So I'm on his radio show, and in the most surreal thing ever, I played one of my punk rock songs.
What were you guys called?
We were called Nude.
Okay.
That's a crazy name, but we thought it was funny that you could say Stephen McCabe, Pete Holmes, and Aaron Bonner Jackson tonight nude. We thought that was really funny. Of course, we never had posters, but if we ever did, that's where the joke would pay off.
You got a plan.
I was also such a marketing kid, meaning like a show business person, that I was like, oh, and our fans can be called nudists. Like, you know how podcasts all have, like my podcast fans are called weirdos. Like, I was way ahead of that. I was like, and our fans will be called nudists. And the merch will say, like, I love being nude or something. Like, I thought it was exactly how we were cheeky, in a Doc Hopper sort of way. And the song was called Fried, and it was an anti-fish song.
Excellent.
It was P-H-R-I-E-D.
Of course.
We were making fun of fish, which I didn't understand. And it was actually sort of straight edge, making fun of, like, taking psychedelics at music festivals, which I've done now, and I would even say I recommend highly. But, like, at the time, I just thought they were burnouts and hippies and sad.
Same.
So I wrote the song. But the chorus was fry the fish, and then you just yell it, fry the fish. And then the second line was kill the dead, meaning kill the Grateful Dead. Which, again, I had never even heard a Grateful Dead song. I didn't even know what I was rebelling against. I just knew punks didn't like hippies. And now I practically am a hippie. But he really liked the line kill the dead. Not because of the Grateful Dead, but he's not wrong.
Yeah.
His instinct is, if there's a good lyric there, kill the dead is pretty fucking badass.
Oh yeah, no, it's a nice play on word. Yeah,
kill the dead. And he sang it, so I had his voice yelling it with me, and I'm playing on his acoustic. It was a nice little Rancid fanboy moment.
So like we played with a Veil and the Suicide Machines, and Lars was there because he was producing the first Dropkicks record, so he was at the show, and I have a video of it. Actually, it might be on YouTube, but it's me and Lars singing "Dancing with Myself" on stage at the St. John's Gym in Clinton, Mass.
That's another thing, by the way. First of all, that's amazing. Second of all, punk and stand-up have so much in common. When I think about the attraction, again, the pull towards that I felt, the way that bands like Dropkick or Rancid would do a show in the basement of a church. It's like if AA can happen there, a punk show can happen there. And if a punk show can happen there, a stand-up show can happen there. When you mentioned the Rat, the first thing I thought was that would be a good alt comedy venue. Because it's so small and you're right on the level of the performers. And I'm like, there were a lot of places like the Rat that just had the same feel. So cut to like 10, 15 years later, I'm in North Dakota looking for some Friars Club to do this weird dinner show for. There was something really like, it took things that were lo-fi and a little bit grungy and a little bit pathetic. I don't mean they're actually pathetic. I just mean they're perceived as pathetic. Like doing a show in a basement of a college, and made it cool. And it also made being, let's be honest, being sensitive cool. I know they have studs on their jacket. You know why? Because they're sensitive and they don't want to be touched. Turtles have shells because they're sensitive. So like, I'm not taking away from them. I'm saying like comedians are, a lot of them, not all of them, but can be very sensitive people, meaning navigating ordinary life for me is overwhelming. That doesn't mean if you watch me, it looks overwhelming or that I can't function. It just means that's why jokes are coming out. They're coming out. It's like the remainder. It's like some people go to a dinner party or a party and the math is clean. It's 5 + 5 is 10. And when I go to a party or a dinner party, the equation is just a little bit more complicated and there's a remainder. Like we're done with the math, but you have a remainder of 7. And if you want to see that remainder of 7, come see me tonight at the Comedy Store. You'll hear me perform the remainder of 7 because I couldn't make sense of what added up as an even number to a lot of people. It felt so weird and so artificial. And all of us freaks, and again, I say that lovingly, comedy fans, music fans, punk fans, whatever it might be, we're all the people that see the world with a remainder and need to reconcile it somehow, need to fix it. Not fix it, but at least work with it somehow.
Yeah, it's also like, I think that the way we make friends as we get older, and it's different now where we have the internet and it's much easier to seek people out through common interests. But like, if you look at how your friends are formed, it's like when you're a kid, it's people who are physically close, like proximity, like neighbors or parents' kids. Then that spreads out a little bit more when you go to school or to work, but it's still based around physical location.
Yeah, that's right.
When you're a teenager, you're able to start making a group of friends based on common interests instead of, it's still somewhat based on location because we're going to shows in the city, but like you're coming from your towns, and that is like a magnitude of difference.
That's right.
At that age where you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is like interesting.
That goes back to the Boston thing. It's like, yeah, we're from Boston. And what you said to, I think, rightly put down some of the whiteheads that we knew was that they married their sweethearts and they doubled down and they stayed in the town. And I am being a judgmental bitch, but I'm just sort of like,
it's fine.
It's part of being human. And it can be fun sometimes and healing potentially.
Well, we had like I grew up in Melrose, which is probably the same distance from Boston as Lexington is.
I lived in Melrose
I
was a kid. I lived on Mara Vista Street.
Reading Hill Ave, right here in the Wakefield.
I left when I was maybe like 6 or 7.
We weren't far from Boston. We're literally like 6 miles, 7 miles. But people we grew up with, if they had to go into the city for any reason, it was like they were going away for a 4-week trip that they had. Like you had to go in town. Like it would be like you would go in there if you had to go to the hospital or like it was a big deal. They'd be like, oh, I got to go in town. I'm like, you can walk there. Yeah. It's they can count the number of times they've been into the city. It's usually around Sox games or something. And in high school, the fact that I would go into the city, it was like this exotic.
I was the same way.
Yeah.
And Ken, I used to take the bus, and we all know what a fucking inconsistent nightmare the 62 bus from Lexington into Alewife to Harvard Square. I just did it on days when I didn't have anything to do. So here's the paradox. Which is it, Ken? We won't figure it out today. Extra sensitive kid, and also the kid that on his weekends would just go into the city just to sort of feel the potential. It was like a bazaar of possibilities. I just liked going to Newbury Comics and seeing T-shirts with swear words on them.
Yeah.
I just liked seeing kids with mohawks. I just liked seeing Jehovah's Witness or whatever they were. I liked seeing... It's not that anyone likes seeing homeless people, but you liked seeing grit and
It was
something...
like color. It was something...
Color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, I think, likely for us, it was... We probably felt wrong in the city we're in. And so being able to go somewhere that feels wrong or a little bit scary, but should feel wrong or a little bit scary, and we're there by our own volition, is somewhat of a control thing. So I think that's probably it.
You just nailed it. I've been saying lately that comedians, and this isn't bad, comedians and TV writers and TV producers, in my experience, and I am a comedian and a TV writer and a TV producer, so really I'm speaking for myself, I have a control fetish. Mm-hmm. And that's a negative way of putting it, meaning fetish, it must be bad. I just mean, and I think any auteur, look at a Wes Anderson movie, man, and look at someone who's screaming for a world that he can control. And if you've ever been on a TV set, like when we were filming Crashing, and someone would be revving their motorcycle engine, and it's ruining the shot, you would literally send somebody over and they would take care of it. I'm not saying it's a power trip. It's a control trip. You're like, we just need it quiet for a little bit. Go give that guy $300 to be quiet for the next hour. He wins, we win. But that is the opposite of our upbringing, which was feeling very out of control.
Totally.
And I think a lot of people did, and a lot of people do, and I think that's even normal, or it can be normal.
People are like, you must just love getting the laughs and it feels good. I'm like, no, this will sound evil, but I like to go on stage and control a room of strangers. Like a bunch of people I don't know, I have a reaction I want to make them have, and they do. I'm walking them down a path and making them react the way that I want, regardless of what it is. It could be laughs, it could be something else, but that's what the interesting thing is.
That's right. And it's reclaiming, to me, booze was involved in my childhood. And then what's that? Same. And then as my job, so again, which is it? Highly sensitive, that's true. And then as my job, I chose to entertain and control, manipulate, and corral drunk people. So every night is a new chance to reparent myself, reprogram myself, and potentially heal myself to say, you know how you felt off or scared or powerless? Well, I'm going to give you hundreds of opportunities to go, you are safe, it's okay. Even if they are drunk, even if it doesn't go well, you are not in physical danger. And I have to do this to myself all the time. I have to say, this is a little bit like my podcast. It's like a self-helpy kind of touchy-feely podcast. But like you go like, I got you. You ever do that? I got you. Yep. Like I hear music coming through a wall if I'm in a hotel and somebody starts blaring music or something. I have to go like, I know there's like loud noises that you're out of control of, but you're not 12.
Yeah.
And I used to have a bit about it. I was like, we have a credit card and we can go get dinner somewhere. You can leave this hotel. If you want to leave this hotel, you can. You don't even have to call and see if they'll complain for you. You can just leave. It's like that punk guy, not the one that hit him in the face, but the one that was like, I'm getting heckled, I'm going to leave. Like remembering that sometimes you do have the agency, and the story that you don't have the agency is actually an old program that you got from when you didn't have the agency because you were literally a child. You were beholden to people, and you don't have to have a lot of money or anything to realize the amount of freedom that you have in a lot of situations. Like I had a girlfriend that used to yell at me all the time. Again, it was working off that old energy that I had from being a child, and kind of like, I think this means she likes me or whatever.
This feels right. This feels familiar.
Yeah, exactly. It's a kink. Again, I use the word kink pretty liberally. I don't mean it's sexually a turn on. I just mean like it's something that should be bad, like getting whipped by a woman in leather, that you like, and for some reason you like this. And then like I had a therapist, and he was wonderful. He really changed my life, and he was just like, you can leave. If someone's just berating you. It's not an argument. It's just you're being yelled at. He said that to me. He was like, you're a 35-year-old man. Like, just get up and say, see you later. This isn't working for me. Like, I thought that you had to like make a case and be like, I understand this is that these are your feelings and I'm uncomfortable. You can just say, this isn't cool. And I wasn't like stonewalling her or doing anything like not answering her questions, not being accountable to something that I did. It wasn't like that. It was just meanness for its own sake. And he was like, go get dinner. Go, you mentioned Uber. Call an Uber. And I live in LA. Go to the beach. You can go walk on the beach. And you know what? All those things do involve money. What I used to do, because I didn't have money, was I would just leave and go for a walk. It was free to go for a walk. If you live in Melrose, you can walk to downtown Boston. I don't know how we got on that.
No, I used to go to Tower Records because they were open until midnight, and I'd just walk around and listen to things because I'm like, I can do that. I could just go there and walk,
In Burlington?
No, the Newbury Street one. The Burlington one closed at 11, which is kind of bullshit.
What a bummer.
I actually drove by there the other day, and the Burlington one is still vacant, which was like kind of a bum up, but I was also kind of like, that's right. Don't you try
That's
to
right.
go
No
in
one
there.
can carry the mantle.
I
didn't like that Tower Records. Tower Records felt scary to me. I like Newbury Comics.
Newbury was cool. People your age were like cool. People who seemed like the cool older sibling you didn't have worked at Newbury Comics, whereas Tower was like adults work there.
I want to tell you it's short. Here's a story. So again, I don't envy the Pete that was like 11 or 12 years old and didn't know about comedy yet, didn't have it yet. Like, I have a set tonight, and I was like, I haven't really been feeling myself. And I was like, you haven't done a set in a few, like 5-6 days. So like, book some shows. So I did. And I'm so glad I have that resource. And it really is a resource. And when I was a kid, what I would do is I had a keyboard that, like, those were popular. And you'd hit demo, and I still remember the song. It would be like, bop, bop, ba-da. It was like, it almost sounded like a game show.
Right.
So what I would do is I would call different businesses in Boston, and I'd play the demo. They'd answer. I'd hit demo, and then I'd do this whole. I have a high voice. People always thought I was a woman, and I'd call and I'd be like, "Congratulations, this is WAAF" or something. I'd pretend to be some radio station, and I'd be like, you can win, and all you have to do is answer this one trivia question. And it was the Wizard of Oz in black and white or color? I thought that was really clever because, of course, it's in both.
Yeah.
It's a trick question. And at the end of this whole spiel, where I'm like sweating, I'm wearing my rayon dress shirt, just like gelled hair like Zach Morris, just like a hammy, little sweaty, clammy boy with a high voice and rubber bands on his braces. And at the end, when I called Newbury Comics and I did the whole thing, everybody hung up, by the way. When I called Newbury Comics, they stayed on the line. They answered the question correctly. And then it was a woman. She said, "That was really great." And I was like, Newbury Comics. And then I like broke character. I was like, really? Thank you so much. I worked really hard on it. And I think that was technically the first time I did stand-up comedy.
That was a quality prank call, kid. You got something.
It changed. It might have changed my life. We can't know. Ken, I do have to wrap up fairly soon, just because my wife is with the baby.
It's quite all right. We can do the actual guide some other time if you like.
I was going to say the only one I got was on. First of all, I love the articles.
This is a great issue. It's the summer movie preview, 1991.
Well, when I saw the image of Kevin Costner with the flaming arrow, I mean, every page was a memory for me. I saw Prince of Thieves at the probably in Burlington. And again, dude, this is just so Boston to me. I remember I was sitting with my brother, and there were these, I call them riff raff, or we also used to call them knuckleheads. And that was just kind of code for
Italian.
No. I don't know how to say it other than knuckleheads, but they were just kind of like, wise ass kids might be a way to say it. And they were sitting right in front of us. And I remember after they were being funny, they were making all these jokes. There was a preview, and it was like for like a romance movie or something. And at the end of it, I went like, ugh, does it come with a pillow? Like I'm trying to be funny. And nobody laughed. And then somebody in front of us goes, the king of the riff raff in front of us goes, no, but you get a blankie. And he made fun of me. And then, but this is what makes it a story, is my brother laughed at the riff raff. I'm like, you're with me. You're supposed to laugh at
Encourage
me.
them.
Don't encourage them. Don't give him another win. He was already winning. I was really going for those that's gotta hurt laughs. Like I was trying to do comedy wherever I could. And then I remember, I might be blending two memories, but Prince of Thieves opens with a fade in on like, it looks like an Arabian city. Like there's like kind of those Tetris shaped buildings. And the guy in front of us, again, I feel like everything in Boston was this way. He seemed drunk or something. And he just fades in and he goes, Bangladesh. He just yelled Bangladesh. And then, as if the movie was heckling him, the title fades in and says Jerusalem. And he goes, Jerusalem! Like he doubled down. And if I called my brother, I'm 42, he's 44, and if I went Bangladesh, he would answer Jerusalem. To this day, Bangladesh, Jerusalem.
Sounds like you're activating spies.
It is. It's like if under distress you say Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like in the Bourne movies, if he goes like, I'm going to give you your keyword, Everest. And if you're fine, you say frost. And if you're under distress, you say peanuts. Anyway, my only one that I picked, Ken, I love this chat so much, was I would watch Star Trek The Next Generation, although that was before 8 o'clock.
Fair enough.
For sure.
Fair enough.
But I would definitely watch Aliens, especially on network TV. It was on Channel 7. Wow,
yeah.
Good for you, Channel 7.
There would have been great swear replacements on that.
That's what I mean. And that was my first closer, was Yippee-Ki-Yay Melon Farmer. And it's not a great bit, but it was, again, I'm just so grateful for where I am in comedy now, meaning, and I feel like you're there too. It's not like a fame thing. It's like comedy has become more sophisticated.
Yeah.
You can do better stuff. And I feel like starting comedy in 2000, 2001, really I started in like 1998 because I would go to the Comedy Connection, but then like really starting again in 2001. You were just trying to make jokes that would work everywhere.
Yeah, you just wanted to do well instead of people like doing what you wanted to do and having people enjoy it, which was a different
But then
thing.
again, we were lucky, like we were noticing that everybody was just trying to make the bit that would work everywhere. Yippee-Ki-Yay Melon Farmer. But then like, because of your Seinfelds, your Mitch Hedbergs and whatnots, we were just, it's like Outliers, it's the book Outliers. You were doing comedy right when the personal computer was made available to Bill Gates.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like went like, oh, it's not just about killing, it's how you kill.
Right.
And like how authentic you are. And even Stephen Wright, how vulnerable you are. I remember opening for Jim Gaffigan. I'm just enjoying talking to you, but
no
he
problem.
said, he was sort of like, we were talking about popular comedians, and I won't say who he shit on, but he was like, I don't know about that guy. Where's the vulnerability?
I know who
And
he's
I was
talking
like,
about.
You do? No. That's really funny. I don't think you could think of any of the mega comedians.
Yeah.
And chances are they're not the most vulnerable person
apply.
in the world. And Jim is a huge comedian now, and he is vulnerable.
Yeah.
He's being vulnerable. He's being more vulnerable, so he figured it out.
You'll enjoy this. To let you go, do you know where Melon Farmer comes from?
No.
So Alex Cox, who directed Repo Man, which is just like a seminal movie for me, when he made the deal for that movie, in his contract, he was still in school, he wrote that he would get to write all the replacement swears for the TV version. That was in his contract. And he came up with Melon Farmer for motherfucker. And so he calls the TV version of Repo Man the Melon Farmer cut because of that. And all the swears he intentionally made ridiculous because he's English. He thought the whole like replacing a swear for TV is just totally stupid. So he did the dumbest possible replacements, and that's all him. It's great.
I can't believe the things you know. The overlap of Waterdog of the Rancid shows, and then you knew where Melon. That was my, like Kumail Nanjiani, who started with me. If we called him and I said yippee-ki-yay, he would say Melon Farm. Like that was a thing.
Yeah.
And it was my go-to, and you knew where it came from. And I didn't make it up. No. It was in the TV edit of Die Hard. He said yippee-ki-yay, Melon Farmer. And I forgot I forget what the punchline was, but it was like something like, how is that an insult? Like, look at this piece. I didn't say piece of shit at the time. I was clean, but I was like, look at this piece of crap. Harvesting melon. It's like that was the big line. And then at the end of my set, I called back Melon Farmer. So it was like a callback. But it's not really fair. You mentioned Bobcat earlier. When Bobcat did my podcast, he was like, so many people got laughs by doing an impression of me.
Yeah.
But he's like, but that's bullshit because I made the voice to be funny.
Yeah, he was
So really, you're sort of just stealing my bit. He didn't say that. I said that.
Yeah.
Like, if you find a funny way to talk, and it's not your real way of talking, you've invented a bit. And then people are like, I just want it. I can't even do it. It's not an easy voice to do.
Right.
That's not an impression. You're ripping him off.
Yeah, totally. At that point, it doesn't matter what you're saying. It's how you're saying it.
It's the same with Seinfeld.
Yeah.
What's the deal with microphones? You put in your voice, it comes out louder. Like, this is just a funny way of talking.
Yeah.
And he doesn't exactly talk that way, obviously, but like, it's cheap. It's a cheap shot.
But that's what people do. Like when we're in bands, you try to sound like your favorite bands to start. It's the people that don't shake that off once they get the skill set to be able to do what to have the sound.
I'm not saying if you watch my early stuff, you would see Seinfeld, but I mean people that were like, here's my Seinfeld impression.
Oh God, yeah.
What's up with eyeballs?
And then do his
they
material.
Look this way, they look that way.
Yeah.
Some are blue, some are brown. What's the deal? Like,
You guys see this guy,
funny.
Jackie Mason?
That's funny because he sounds funny,
Yeah.
and you can't just take that.
That's people are wrong, and they want shorthand.
And
they want shortcuts.
They deserve retribution.
They do, and in my vigilante nighttime, I go all around the Boston area and I make them pay.
That is so funny, and I would believe it, putting their name in the want ad.
That's right.
And then I'd watch New Kids on the Block.
Oh, a special?
Bill Cosby himself airing at 11:30 on the Disney Channel
Disney.
on May 25th, 1991. I know Bill Cosby is a sex predator and a bad person.
That's a good special.
And that special changed my life.
Same.
That's what I was going to say. You know what the moment is? He tells his first joke, and then he acts surprised that they laughed. And you're like, this guy's run this hour hundreds of times. But he, in that moment, is showing the audience how important they are and how closely he's paying attention to them. And that's something I'll never forget. Like, you need to reinforce their laughing. Like, they're paying attention to you, but you're paying attention to them. And that's where I first saw that. He goes like this. He literally goes like, zip-a-da-dip-a-da-doop, and they laugh, and he goes, he looks like he's shocked that they laugh. Like he forgot they were there, and it was a great moment.
It's a great way for him to be like, I see you, and you could affect the show as well. Yeah, that's
right.
It's brilliant.
And we're back to our traumatic childhood. That's all we wanted, was like to be paid attention to, but also to pay attention to something. So you get the feedback loop of attention being paid, and every time you hear a laugh, you know you've been heard.
Well, you want the world to acknowledge your existence in some way, and if it's a cause and effect or whatever it is, it's.
And you know what, dude? That's not fucked up.
No,
like it's we're supposed to be like, oh, how narcissistic that you want to have your existence validated. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Your waiter at Applebee's does. Your doctor does. The mayor does. It doesn't matter. We would just like to be reflected back in a loving way. And that's what laughter can be.
So great to talk to you. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
And yeah, hopefully.
I clearly loved it.
Hopefully we'll see each other at some point in person if the world doesn't end.
I hope so. And I don't think it will.
Oh, baby, I see you in my TV set. Yeah, baby, I see you in my TV set. I cut your head off and put it in my TV set. I use your eyeball.
So that is Pete, and it would be a massive oversight on my part if I didn't get on the horn and call my friend Trip Underwood from the unseen and discuss this, so that's exactly what I did. Trip Underwood, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, my friend. Thank you.
So the reason for my call this evening is I had just talked
So formal.
It is very formal. It is very formal. I regret to inform you. I was talking to Pete Holmes the other day, who I know from comedy, and Pete, I knew was like into punk rock and grew up in the Boston area as we did, but I kind of always pegged him for like maybe a Lookout Records guy.
At best.
At best. And I was absolutely shocked when I asked him, I was like, well, who are your bands? And literally the first band he comes out with, The Unseen.
Amazing. I will say, not one to judge people by appearance, but the fact that Pete Holmes is more of a Unseen guy than a Showcase Showdown guy is mind-blowing.
Yeah, that shocked me. Like, it was, I was like, wow, that's kind of badass. And also, it's always strange that, although obviously you guys are very accomplished, and I think probably the longest running of the bands we started with easily, it's always weird when somebody you know from somewhere else knows someone you know from the old punk scene.
It's like seeing a grade school teacher off ground.
Yes.
Does that make any sense? Like,
Yeah.
I remember once I saw like my second grade teacher walking around, going into a bar, like a totally normal adult thing. But as a little kid, I was like, you're not supposed to be out here. And I feel that all the time when I run into like people from our past. I'm like, oh, this is the school teacher on Sunday scenario.
Yes.
Like this is a weird thing that you're not supposed to exist outside of this, my point of reference. And then lo and behold, people exist outside of my point of reference, which is very tough for me to acknowledge as a white straight male, but I'm coming to terms with this.
I know, we're both middle-aged men now, and this is the thing that happens, which we should not be surprised by. But
We're so confounded by the idea that the world does not work around our point of view. It's wild.
exactly. But when I was talking to you the other night, you were like, sincerely, like you always imagine that if you're doing some sort of art of note, you didn't call it art, but I am, or in a band.
Or of note, might I add.
Or of note. That eventually somebody who was a fan of that growing up probably would go on to do something notable. And there's no one really we could think of from, the bands that we were all in or hanging out with. So it was like, oh, this is the guy.
I read a quote from a woman that I know you and I are both mutual fans of Gillian Anderson. For whatever reason, I remember like something back in the early days of the X-Files where she used to talk about going to all these punk shows and being front row center and how it informed a lot of her earlier stuff. She developed to become this big actress. And then I always thought, reading that, like at the time when you and I are playing in those bands at the Rat, like we're not playing these huge shows, but we're playing well-attended shows with a lot of like cool and at least creative people. I'm like, one of these people is going to turn out to be famous. They're going to turn out to be this cool firebrand actress
Right.
like Scully.
Right. So Pete Holmes is our
I did
Scully.
not think that person would eventually be Pete Holmes, but I'll take what I can get. We
Yeah, no, still very
That's good.
notable. Yeah, it's funny because so Pete,
notable.
my other favorite thing was he used to write you guys letters, which is amazing.
That is amazing. Such an intimate. I mean, I know it wasn't back then because it probably predates the internet age. But the idea that Pete Holmes would take such an intimate form of communication, like how Walden would communicate with people, and
Like Civil War letters.
Yes, exactly. This is how war heroes would communicate with their betrothed and their beloved back home. And Pete Holmes is writing that to the Unseen, asking for like, I don't know, I'm assuming a patch
Yeah,
or
some pins or something.
Is of note.
Did Mark do all the mail, or did you guys spread it around?
No, Mark, my then drummer, now singer, a lovely man, but incredibly controlling in every sense of the word. He was in charge of that. And to be honest, to be fair, with good reason. Because if Pete Holmes wrote me a letter, I would look at it, I would read it, and he would say, "Can I have a patch?" And I'd be like, "Your name is like John Holmes. That guy has a big dick." And then I'd throw it away. And I guarantee you, Mark had the follow through to at least follow back, or if not, send him like whatever passed as our street team material back in 1995.
Right. Yeah, which he did. He said he wrote back. It was very nice, and it meant quite a bit to Pete, which was really cool.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So they had correspondence.
Yes, absolutely. They were pen pals.
They were pen pals. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
that's what I'd call them, pen pals. Bosoms, I think I'd call them.
Pen bosom.
Pen bosoms. And then Pete played the bass because you played the bass.
Wait, so I am his inspiration. So now we're getting into the fact that I am his creative inspiration.
That's
I'm
right.
a muse.
Right. You're the Bette Midler to his beaches.
Well, he will always be the wind beneath my. No, I will be the wind beneath his wings, I guess, in this particular scenario. I think the fact that Pete Holmes is a famous comedian and not a famous bass player speaks volumes to my particular prowess on the instrument. But it's very endearing to hear. That's cool. That's fun.
Yeah, it is amazing when I talk about it on the show a lot more in the context of stuff like people making TV shows or things like that, and I definitely don't think about stuff that I've done, but you make these things, they kind of go out there in the world, and then you kind of don't know who they reach or how it influences them at all. And it is always...
It's not yours anymore.
Yeah, totally. And it's always a shock, even if it makes sense or it's not even that strange. It's always shocking when that comes back. I
guess maybe it comes with age. I've been quote unquote creating for a long time. I did the shit with the unseen, and now I am I hate to use the word, but professional. I work in a corporate world, but I make shit.
Yeah, got to pay them bills, but do it in an interesting way.
It pays them bills better than punk rock. Be surprised. And then it out in the world, and I never think about it anymore. And then every now and again, it comes back in some weird capacity like this. And it's always like, oh yeah, that was fun. I'm glad I did that. I'm glad it resonates. That, what is the analogy I'm looking for? It's the ripple in the pond. You throw the fucking rock and then you don't think it anymore. And those ripples create other ripples. And then every now and again, it washes up on your shore, and it's cool. It was my entire world. Yeah. And it was, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years top. You know what I mean? Like, I look back at it and it seems like this monumental time in my life, and it spans all these relationships and all this time and blah, blah, blah. And then if I go back and actually look at the dates on the calendar, it's much shorter than most of my other relationships in my life. My work, which I still can think of like, oh, I haven't been there for that long. I've been there for at least 3 years longer than the tenure when we were the house band at the Raff. Yeah. Or, all that other stuff. But that time in your life, because you're younger and it's just so influential and you're changing so much, 4 years at 18 is the equivalent of, I don't know, 20, or what's a dog year equivalent in your 40s,
28.
Where we're sitting.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, yeah, it's like a decade. Each year's almost like a decade.
So I look back at that stuff as though it was pretty inconsequential in terms of timeline and maybe significance to the greater pop culture world. And I guess for us, it does feel like a very big deal. So the fact that somebody that's reached the heights that Pete Holmes has was a part of it in some way, in a less of a lead role, we'll say, and then grew into something else, doesn't surprise me at all. Like, it's cool, but it's not surprising to me.
Right. Literally grew the heights. He's 6'6".
Is he really? He dwarfs you.
I know. Which actually
dwarfs me by much.
Surprised me, because he was like, I was a tall guy at shows, and I'm like, there was only like 3 tall guys, and I don't remember. Again, I love the fact that I feel like sometimes I lead this weird Zelig type life where I know all these people from disparate parts of my life experience, and it's always funny when they intersect, and I always like to point it out to the people when it does. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we're all doing in some way, and I think I don't know, culture, like cool shit's cool shit. Yeah. And if cool shit is a weird movie, and if cool shit is good comedy, and if cool shit is good music, cool finds cool. So like it though it feels disparate, it makes total fucking sense, for lack of a better non-expletive laden description. But no, I think that's I get it, and I love it, and I get it. Well, if you have anything you'd like to say directly to Pete, I'll make sure he hears this.
I would say, Pete, I apologize for the handwriting on the letters that you received with your pen pal with Mark. Mark is a incredibly accomplished person and musician, but he has the handwriting of a chicken. It's awful. I can't read it at this thing. So if you have any questions that weren't answered back in 1995 because you could not read his handwriting, I want you to feel free to reach out to Ken who will then reach out to me because I don't want you to have my direct email.
Right, you're right.
And I will follow up with any kind of deep, unseen questions you need answered.
Well, this is
now in 2021.
This is amazing. We're making it happen, and in a world where we're also separated due to the apocalypse, it's nice to be able to bring people together.
Pandemic has finally peaked now that Pete Holmes can get directly to me about base questions. This is why Zoom was truly invented, so this conversation could happen, and you could forward me a message from Pete Holmes.
Yes, and now they're going to shut down the company. They're like, we did it, done. No one's going to top this.
Everyone go home, mission accomplished. They dropped the banner like Bush.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll have to expand on this later and follow up maybe with Pete's unanswered unseen questions.
Unheard, unseen. I look forward to it, man. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, baby, I see you in my TV set, yeah, baby, I see you in my TV set. I cut your head off and put it in my TV set.
There you go. That's Trip. So, Pete, hopefully you take him up on contacting me to contact him. If you have any burning questions that were left unanswered 25 years ago, we can solve that problem for you right now. So thanks to Trip for doing that. That was a lot of fun. I actually hadn't talked to him in a while, so it was really nice to catch up. So thanks to Pete for sparking that and for doing the show. Thank you for listening. We have a brand new episode each and every week, and next week will be no exception. So I hope to see you then for that brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
I want to let you host your show,
Oh, no,
but
it's
like
fine.